And since we're talking about the Super Bowl, maybe we should do this topic first. So I was thinking that I was watching for the commercials like everyone does a little bit. I was also watching for the game, but I was paying attention to the commercials, and there were a handful of video game commercials, but they were almost all free-to-play mobile and PC games, with the exception of Zelda. So I wonder. Here's basically my question. Is it significant that older free-to-play games get Super Bowl ads, but new upcoming blockbusters from companies like Sony, Microsoft, and EA don't?
Well, I mean, this isn't even really a new thing, right? Like,
No.
This happened last year. I think
And the year
I think
before.
I think the first Mobile Strike ad, if I remember, was last year.
That's right.
With,
Clash of
with
Clans was the
Schwarzenegger.
year before. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Boom Beach, maybe something like that. But yeah, this isn't all. It's kind of just how these things go, and I think part of it is just kind of the need, right? Because these games are so dependent on acquiring users.
Right.
I do think it's interesting that it's a lot of these like older games that we're doing it this year, right?
Right. So World of Tanks it came out in 2010. Mobile Strike came out in 2015. Not super old, but I mean, compared to like you don't advertise a movie from 2015. This business model is very
Right.
unique to gaming. So, and then Ebony, which maybe we should talk about a little bit more, came out in 2009. It's a friggin'
I had
flash
no
game.
idea. I had no idea people took that seriously. How did
I
they
know.
get money for a Super Bowl ad?
I think those. Okay, so let's explain real quick. So people that
I
don't
think
know.
they went to the bank. They're like, we need to take out a loan, my lord.
Oh yeah. So Ebony, if you're not familiar, maybe it sounds a little bit familiar. It's that game that puts like the half-naked ladies in its ads on the side of Facebook, on the side of websites, and it's like, "Come save me, my lord," and it's like this Hooters girl on the side there in a bikini. And then the game, of course, is nothing like that. It's basically like a city building Civ ripoff from 2009, and it is a flash game, and it is junk. It is complete garbage. My guess is either they went to the bank, got a huge loan, but I think what more likely is that those ads just work, and people have been giving it money for that long, and they had $5 million to spend on a Super
That is
Bowl ad.
hilarious.
That is nuts. The fact, I think that's kind of what actually brought it home for me. I'm like, this game is getting an ad, and yet Horizon Zero Dawn is coming out in a couple of weeks. No ad. What else? There's Halo Wars 2. They had a trailer. There's a big cinematic trailer from Microsoft out today, the day after the Super Bowl, but they didn't want to put that during the Super Bowl because, I mean, I think there's a reason they don't want to spend the money. But like, why is that a bad investment in terms of marketing? Is it just that they know that there's an audience out there that will be wanting to buy this game, and they should just be focusing on them instead of the wider audience at the Super Bowl?
Right. I mean, there's got to be a reason. Part of it is just trying to reach, because the Super Bowl, it's not, obviously it has a very large kind of male audience, but it's a bit wider than that, right? Like typically when you're doing football, you're maybe you look at the cross section of the audience, like, oh, this is going to target a lot of our Halo Wars players or Horizon players. Whereas, and I think that's why we see these things. They're just trying to get it as like many people as possible. It's all about just acquiring users.
Right.
I think it's the same reason why Nintendo did decide to pony up the money for this, because they wanted to show their thing to everybody and not just some whatever segment. But it is, it's the most expensive ad you can get. I'm pretty sure, right?
Yeah,
So,
I mean, if there's more expensive, it's probably going to be a similar event like this. So for all intents and purposes, yeah, this is the most expensive. But it just makes me think like, so a bunch of new movies got trailers, and so those movies are going after that audience, and it just, to me, it seems to signify that the audience for a new blockbuster film release with like Wolverine in it or whatever is probably the same audience that these free-to-play game developers are going after. And it's not the same audience that a AAA blockbuster company is trying to go after. Like Microsoft with Halo Wars 2 doesn't think that the same demographic of people that are going to show up for Logan on opening weekend are going to show up for Halo Wars 2.
No, like there's still just like a bit of a hardcoreness that I could tell you if the timing worked out so that like the new Call of Duty was going to come out in the next couple of months or
Maybe.
a few months.
They always
I think Call of Duty
Yes.
could make sense out of getting a trailer like that, or even Madden or something like that.
Right.
But Horizon, it's still just they're probably better off spending their money on something like Twitch advertising.
Yeah. I mean,
honestly,
or
they can
just like
really target their demographics.
or like a typical NFL Sunday weekend. Whereas like you see a lot of like Microsoft ads and Sony ads on those weekends, just not at the Super Bowl. So maybe they think that the smaller subsection of just pure football fans are more interested in that. But it's like, yeah. So I think you're right about Call of Duty, and I think, but the line there might be like Call of Duty, Madden, maybe like one or two other games, but like Mass Effect, a huge, probably one of the biggest games that are going to come out this in the first half of this year, potentially. I mean, who knows? But
Right.
that game's not getting an ad. It just seems very strange to me
No.
that the Super Bowl this is not a good opportunity for.
Well, yeah, right. Because just we're kind of used to vegans becoming more mainstream, and yet for whatever reason, it is this kind of strange thing where so many games have been getting more accessible, but there are still that kind of class of game, this sort of that like regular AAA in a way, I don't even know what to call it, that are still just kind of a little not. It's not even niche. Obviously, like Horizon's not going to be a niche game,
Right.
but
I mean,
there's a little something to it.
yeah, I think it's just, and maybe in my head that's what it is. It's like these games are the biggest games in the world. They're the blockbusters, they're the AAA. They are the equivalent of a Hollywood a summer blockbuster picture coming out. So when they aren't treated like in a very similar way, it's like what's the break here? Why are these two things so separate in the way that they're marketed? And yeah, I just think that the companies making these games know that there is an audience with a lot of money, but it is smaller and it is dedicated, and they can reach them in more efficient ways than a Super Bowl ad. And then the wider audience, they're all on mobile, and you can get those people with a free to play game, or
having
PC even with World of Tanks.
So having said all of that, are you surprised that Nintendo got a Switch / Zelda ad?
Right.
Which, you kind of say it. You kind of identify as a Zelda ad first. I saw it as more of a Switch ad first.
So I was thinking it was going to be that Switch ad that they actually showed and said was their Super Bowl ad, and they showed a bunch of different games and not just Zelda. So when it was like,
I didn't see that.
yeah, so then this is like a shorter version where they just showed the Zelda gameplay, and then they're at the end they're like, Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild, get it on Switch, coming out November or March 3rd. You're right. It was definitely more of a Switch ad than than any pure video game ad would have been, because and that's why I think Nintendo did spend the money. They went for it because this was both a Zelda ad and a Switch ad. They combined both. They gave people a big game reason to come out and buy this new system, and so it kind of, I think that's the reason why how they could justify it to themselves, why it's worth going to the Super Bowl. Had it just been Zelda coming out on the Switch, like next year or the year after the console had been out for a while, I don't think Nintendo would have bought a Super Bowl ad. So it's definitely about the Switch, even if the ad kind of was 50-50 in terms of what it was actually promoting.
Mm-hmm. Man, I wonder if I assume that ad did not mention the Wii U version of that game.
So if it did, I was trying to think about that, but I was like writing some other stories at the time. So like when it came by at the end, I'm like, I wonder if it's in there in like some small text that I just missed or something. Like, where they're like they shouted, Switch March 3rd, Zelda Breath of the Wild, and then maybe like it would have been and also available on Wii U in like white text right below that. But I actually didn't go back and look on that. If they did, that's the only place they mentioned it.
All right. I bet there's got to be people in Nintendo that just wish they didn't announce that game on the early side as a Wii U game, so that they could have like internally made that decision just to put it on Switch in general. But yeah, did you think it was an effective ad? I'm just kind of with the people I was with, but like some people's parents and stuff. It definitely seemed a bit more intrigued by the Switch, and like because it looked different as opposed to the 5th mobile game ad about some sort of strategy game, build a city thing.
Mm-hmm. I think it was effective. I think it's going to people are going to see that, and they're going to see the system, and they're going to see the game, and they're going to recognize the Zelda elements, and they're going to be like, wow, that looks kind of like I could take that on the go. Is that how that's going to work? And you say, yeah, that's exactly what it is. I think that'll intrigue people. However, I wish they would have just showed a shorter version of the premiere trailer that they showed a few weeks ago, because that trailer was so good. And if they were going to make this a Zelda ad, which, like we're kind of figuring out whether or not it was, but as much as they made it a Zelda ad, I think they should have just taken that trailer that was so incredible and found a way to make that 30 seconds or a minute and put that in the Super Bowl instead.
So, yeah, one of the great things about, like, the Switch, which was a big problem with the Wii U, like, it was always very hard for them to, like, show the Wii U in a video and, like, get people to understand what it was. The Switch, you have that one moment. You could, the whole commercial can almost just be that, where he's playing it portably, he just slides it into the dock, and he's playing it on the TV instantly, and like that kind of just sort of sells it.
No
right
words,
there,
like
nice.
You don't need any words to explain what's happening. You could follow it all, and it just makes sense in your head. Like all three of those states just tie together really easily. And you don't have to get into like the minutia. And it's it's not just in ads too. I think Chris Kohler, former Wired guy, Game Life guy, was playing it at the Zelda escape room thing that Nintendo's doing.
Yeah, I was hearing for that. I was jealous.
Yeah, and the thing looks really cool. I wish they had one in Denver. I would totally go. But he said like a bunch of people from the public were playing the system, and it's very obvious that playing it and touching it and getting a sense of what it is, the system is very attractive in terms of getting people to want to buy it. Like it seems to have like all the features, like people can figure out in their heads the ways that they will use it. And they can imagine it and they can picture themselves in those situations. And so I think that Nintendo has done a good job in all respects of positioning that system in a way that they could do a Super Bowl ad and kind of get their money's worth because it makes so much sense. And then they can do these events where people get their hands on the system and it makes sense because people just can imagine themselves.
Switch is sure going to make this a fun year, just kind of following that launch and seeing how people react to it. And
I'm excited I'm excited to play it myself, to get it, to try it out, and then to see what everyone thinks, and then to kind of see if it does anything, if Nintendo does anything with this momentum it's had from 2016 with Pokemon and the NES Classic, if they can turn that nostalgia into present day success, parts of that would be very interesting.